All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good
All
morning.
right. Oh, I am so thrilled to welcome everyone this morning here in the sanctuary, joining us online, joining us at a later time, and to celebrate the fact that it's raining.
Yay!
For those of you joining us from somewhere else, we've had the driest winter since 1850.
Wow.
And it is raining right now, and we are thrilled.
Yeah.
So please join us in celebrating that today.
The rain dance worked.
And I'm sure that there are lots of people snuggled up under the covers in today's rain, and I affirm and celebrate that place to be too. But I'm so glad that those of you who are here this morning have joined us, and those of you online. I see Reverend Suzette is joining us, and lots of other folks too. So we're going to talk today about choosing possibility and choosing action. But before we get to that, I want to invite you to join us in singing our opening song and welcoming
We all know
each
it by
other.
heart by now. What is it? A light in this world. Just follow.
Follow along.
All right. You ready, Sylvia?
This is Leslie.
And Leslie, thank you.
Alexander.
Please welcome Leslie.
Glad to be back.
Okay. Leslie,
Here we
let's
go.
take it away.
All right. And the first is I, right?
I, and then you, and then we
There we go.
are a light.
So here we go.
I am a light. I am a light. I am a light in this world. I am a light. I am a light. I am a light in this world. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. And I shine, and I shine, and I shine so bright. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. You are a light, you are a light, you are a light in this world. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. And you shine, and you shine, and you shine so bright. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. Yes, we are. We are a light, we are a light, we are a light in this world. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine, and we shine, and we shine so bright. And we shine so bright.
All right. Well, now that we've opened up our hearts, let's take a seat again and turn within. I want to welcome Sylvia, our practitioner this morning, who's going to lead us in a meditation.
You are led through your lifetime by the inner learning creature, the playful spiritual being who is your real self. Don't turn away from possible futures before you're certain you don't have anything to learn from them. You're always free to change your mind and choose a different future. During our silent meditation, I invite you to contemplate this very thought. I'm always free to choose a different future. Always and ever, God is all there is. Simply presence in all its divine glory and beauty, flowing through everything and everyone. And always the creation and creativity by the Creator is always active. And so I am so grateful that each and every one is blessed by the enlivened presence of Divine Spirit within them, by whatever name you choose to name it. It is all good, all-knowing, everywhere, all at once, and accepts and receives love constantly. So I'm grateful for this day that God has made, for this day that is unfolding perfectly, for the community here within these precious walls at Om, and beyond, out into the world, and even beyond, to where our thoughts and prayers always rise. I am grateful for how everything unfolds perfectly, for the message given by our beloved minister today, Reverend Natasha, and for the technology that is so ably handled by Martin, our wonderful tech extraordinaire, and by the music of Leslie Alexander, and by the presence of each and every one who is here, who is online, who is even thinking of us as a group, as individuals, as Om. So I give great thanks for the beautiful rain, the change of weather, our change in ourselves, to greet every day as a perfect blessing and miracle. And so I call it good, very good. And together we say, and so it is. All right. Well, now we have the absolute pleasure of music by, who else? Leslie Alexander.
People have said, welcome back, but I didn't know I was gone. If you know this song, please sing along. It's an easy song because it says the same thing over and over again, kind of a reminder. And here's the reminder. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we all live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we all live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we all live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, we all live in harmony, and peace has come, for we are one. Last time. We are one. We are one. I am you, you are me, we are one. And in this unity, has come, for we are one. And peace has come, for we are one.
Thank you, Leslie. That was beautiful. Okay. Well, good morning again. Wonderful to see all your smiling faces, and wonderful to see the rain in the backdrop here through the window. Yeah. Hallelujah indeed. I think for all of us, especially who've lived here in San Diego in the last week and certainly in Southern California, and been dealing with fires and smoke and worry and anxiety, the rain is finally here, and it is a huge weight lifted off of all of us, I think. So I just want to name that and lift that up, lift up my gratitude for that rain. So today, we are exploring the question of choice, and I'll just give you some context for this. Our theme this year at Centers for Spiritual Living is rising higher and growing deeper. And I think the idea of that is how we can take this teaching, the teaching of religious science, take it more deeply into our lives so that we experience greater good in our lives, right? And also how we can engage more fully in the world. So one of the dimensions of our teaching, kind of historically, has been that it was very focused on the individual, right? It's focused on learning who we really are, that we are one with the divine, that the divine is always moving in as and through us, and that we can use certain spiritual principles and tools to kind of allow that divine spirit to move through us into a more positive and greater experience. And that focus was really, as I said, individual. We were not so focused on our engagement with the world around us, right? Because I think people kind of generally perceive that as something that was part of the physical expression, but not the truth, right? The truth is already within us, and our job is to connect with that and then channel it out. But we live in I think we are evolving as a movement to more of a not either or kind of way of thinking about things, but an and way of thinking about things. So we're focusing on our teaching and how we use it, but also on who we are in the world and how we can be part of creating a world that works for everyone. That's a phrase that's part of our global vision, and that's a very important phrase that I want to talk about a little bit more. But part of this idea, right, of both rising higher and growing deeper, as I said, is connecting the and, right? The internal and the external, really living in a kind of more holistic approach that recognizes that part of our work is to integrate everything into our lives and our experience, to have more than just what some might call a more superficial spirituality, but one that is deeply engaged in our lived experience, not only as individuals, but as community, right? Because that is part of the fundamental nature of our humanness, is that for the most part, and for most of us, we do not live alone on a mountaintop. There might be a few people who do that, but most of us live in community. And so what does that mean? How do we do that? What is ours to do? There is a CSL minister named Reverend Darrell Jones who says there is so much God to consider everywhere around us. I really love that phrase. Because what we know is that there is no place that God is not, right? God is within us, but also without us, because God is always moving through us into expression. So anything that we experience, anything that we observe, anything that we see is also God. Right? So we need to figure out kind of how to navigate that. So for many years in Centers for Spiritual Living, in our teaching, the month of January has been the month of review, right? We review the basics of our teaching. And for those of you who are familiar with the Science of Mind textbook, there are 4 chapters at the beginning that are the basis, that fundamental principles that we review. So the thing itself is chapter 1. That's usually the first week in January. The way it works, chapter 2, second week. What it does, chapter 3. And finally, how to use it, chapter 4. That's our theme for today. How do we use this principle? What is the point, right? And I want to really talk this morning with you about the issue of choice and the importance of choice in this question of how do we use it. Choosing to take action with spiritual principle to manifest greater good in our lives, and also choosing to take action in the world. So let's see if I can do this morning. So you all know that I always like to check in on our principles when I speak with you. So this is one of our fundamental principles. We believe in the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. Now, this is kind of an abstract statement, maybe a little challenging to make sense of in terms of its mechanics, but the important thing to really think about here is that God is always present, right? That is the universal spirit, the source of everything, ourselves and everything else included, that it operates through what we call law, and by which we mean certain mechanisms. We don't fully understand the nature of these mechanisms, but simply that they exist and that our mind can engage with this thing we call the law, which expresses itself through us and creates our experience. So it is not simply that in our movement, we do not believe in a God that is somewhere far away who is mapping out the experience of every individual, right? So our movement is really founded on a belief in a certain sense of free will, right? We experience what we believe. What we believe may be conscious. What we believe might be operating kind of subconsciously in the sense of messages that we've learned in our families and our culture. But all of those beliefs, sort of subconscious or conscious, are always engaging with this mechanism that we call the law and creating our experience. And so our project as human beings, if we are experiencing something that we don't like, that is uncomfortable, that is painful, is to change our thinking, is to change our beliefs. And it is our premise, our fundamental teaching, that when we do that, our experience improves. We manifest a new experience. How do we know that this is true, that it works? Well, Ernest Holmes was very clear about this. He said, you know that it works if you see your experience change, right? If you are doing this practice and you don't see anything change, well, okay, there's 2 possibilities. 1, this is not true. Or 2, this one's a little harder sometimes, you need to practice more. Ooh, that word, practice. Does anybody else feel a little, I don't know what, irritated, frustrated, when you hear, well, you just have to practice more, right? How many people heard growing up, you need to practice more for something, right? At school, learning an instrument, playing a game, whatever it might be. That is also part of our human experience, isn't it? The necessity of practice. And it kind of conflicts, at least I think for us in our American culture, because we are the culture of right now, easy, right? If things are working right, it shouldn't take any effort. It should happen immediately. And that's when we know that things are good. And yet, how frustrating, right? Because that doesn't seem to be the way that the world works. Right? So contemplating, reading about our spiritual principles are valuable practices, but the most powerful action comes through practice. So to truly engage with the benefit of this teaching, we have to be actively practicing. And the more that we practice, the more that we will see. That is our argument. Ernest Holmes said this: "One of the greatest difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice." Right? We have a very heady kind of philosophy, right? We like to hang out there in our heads. As a matter of fact, we can only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. What is a demonstration? That is whatever it is you would like to experience more of that you have been focusing on showing up, right? Do you want to experience more love? Well, that's a better relationship or a person with whom to have a relationship showing up. Do you want to experience greater abundance? That's more resources of every kind showing up in your life, right? Whether it's money, whether it's work, whether it's people, whatever it is that you want to experience, it is that showing up that we call a demonstration. And it is our argument, right? It is our teaching that the more that you practice, the more that is going to show up, right? That which we cannot prove may or may not be true, but that which we can prove certainly must be and is the truth. I can remember when I first took my first foundations class with Reverend Suzette. I loved the idea of this, but I was completely perplexed by how could you actually do this? And I was, I had a lot of things going on in my life that I was not very happy experiencing, but I really did not know, how do you change this? What do you do? And I will say that in my journey with religious science, which has been going on, I'm sort of surprised to realize is about 20 years. 2005 was the first service that I attended. That over these years, as I have learned to practice the principles and to use the tools, right, that have been developed over the years by members of our movement, drawing upon ancient wisdom, right, that a lot of things in my life have improved. But it was a process, and there were a lot of times when I really didn't know how to believe it, whether to believe it, and I really relied on other people, like Reverend Suzette, like practitioners I met at the beginning, who could share with me how they had resolved some of the challenges in their life. So even if I couldn't see it, I could say, wow, okay, that has worked with this person. That has worked with that person. So maybe, just maybe, it might work for me. And I'm grateful for all of those people who helped show me the way. And for any of you who are here this morning or joining us online, we have ministers and practitioners who are here to support you in your exploration of these principles and seeing how they can work in your life. Because as we know, God and law are always available to be part of that process of expressing whatever it is that we want to focus on. So what are some of the tools? We're going to talk today about, just very briefly, for those of you who, how many people here have taken a foundations class or read Science of Mind? So some folks, okay. Well, for those of you who have not, I just want to encourage you to consider taking a class, because our teaching is very built around the idea of education, but also that as you learn, you practice with people, and that's a powerful practice. Or to read, if the Science of Mind textbook, which I admit is now about 100 years old and written in the style of 100 years ago, so perhaps not always the easiest thing to read, but we have a wonderful journal, magazine, that is in a much more contemporary style. It's a lot more accessible, so that's something else to think about if you are interested in learning more about these principles and how people use them. But the fundamental idea of how to use it, right, is practice. And how do you practice? So the way that you practice is to think about how you change your thinking. How do we change our thinking? So it's to identify what are the beliefs that are getting in the way. So here's an example. I want to experience more financial abundance in my life, but I grew up believing that, you know, it's a really hard world and you have to work so hard to get ahead, and, you know, that's not going to happen for me, right? I don't have the education I need, or I don't have the skills that I need, or I've never seen anybody in my family or my community really succeed and improve their lives. So how do we change a belief like that, right? And it's not that there's anything wrong. I don't want to put this in judgment, but what we can say about such a belief is that in the context of our teaching, it is getting in the way, right? It is getting in the way of the divine expressing itself as us, because because what God says, what the divine says, is always yes. I don't believe I can do that. Okay, yes. Right? I don't deserve it. I'm not a good person. Okay, yes. Right? The universe always says yes. So the only way for us to change that dynamic is to affirm something that we do want to experience. So what's an affirmation? I am worthy. Okay, yes. Right? I can learn anything I need to know. Okay, yes. Right? Opportunities, there are endless opportunities for me to encounter. Okay, yes. And it sounds shocking in some ways, doesn't it? That it could be as simple as changing a thought like that. And yet I can say to you, I have experienced this in my own life. I have witnessed this in the lives of many others, and I have read and heard about it in the lives of many more. So I believe this from the empirical experience of my own life. And as Ernest Holmes says, the invitation is for everyone to test it. Test it for yourself, right? Don't listen to what I'm saying today. Don't focus on what he wrote. Test it. That is really your task. So the choice is possibility, right? The possibility that something can be better than you are experiencing now, the possibility that you can experience something that you want to experience, and then the action is choice, right? Because the only thing that stops us is inaction. The only thing that stops us is not doing something. And thinking that, well, I don't know how to do it yet, or I don't know how to do it perfectly. Does anybody ever get hung up by I don't know how to do it perfectly? I have. Absolutely. Right. For those of you who have learned an instrument, did you play beautifully immediately? No? No. Whether it's the piano, the violin, the guitar, right? It doesn't sound great right away, because all your muscles have to learn how to play the instrument. And this is no different. We learn to use our mind in that same way, to use our thoughts in the same way we use our muscles to learn to play an instrument. This is about using our thoughts in the same way, to learn how to think and thereby put ourselves in greater alignment with the good that is always present and available. So what's another tool that we can use? All right, so we want to have a new thought, right? We want to say, yes, I am worthy, but that other old I am not worthy thought, that's still kind of lurking in there. Some of those negative beliefs and thoughts are really pretty deeply rooted. If that is something that you learned in life as a child, that you heard reaffirmed over and over by people around you, boy, it's like an onion, right? You think, okay, I'm discarding it, but Oh, there's another layer. You got to pull it off again. You got to keep pulling it off again. So frustrating. So another tool that we use is to deny, to challenge and deny those old thought patterns, right? So we can deny that belief in not being worthy. We can say, this is not the truth, right? So we have both the affirmation of the positive and the denial of the negative. Those are two tools that we can be using. And we want to focus more on the affirmation of the positive, but recognizing how deeply rooted some of those negative beliefs can be is also part of helping ourselves release them, right? And that's a process, right? Again, that practice thing. You know, in theory, all of this can happen in an instant. There is no limitation on spirit to say, well, this has to take days, weeks, months, years. It doesn't have to take any time at all. But our humanness, it usually does take a while with our humanness. It took however old we are when we come to this teaching. Well, we've had years, sometimes decades, right, to really lock in some of those negative beliefs, some of those beliefs that get in our way. Yeah, so it might take a little while to release them, to let them get out of the way. So what's a third tool that we can use? We call one of those is affirmative prayer, what we call spiritual mind treatment. And basically spiritual mind treatment is a kind of fundamental affirmation. It is a prayer, not a petitionary prayer. We're not asking God somewhere else to give us something. But it is a form of prayer where we basically ask ourselves, right? We claim for ourselves. We affirm the belief that God is present, that anything is possible through law, that God is all the good that there is, and we claim something specific, something that we want to experience, and then we release that to God, to the universe, knowing that it is already done. Because what do we know? The universe always says what? Yes. Right. Okay. So spiritual mind treatment, that's another tool that we use. And for those of you who want to learn more about it, again, our practitioners, our ministers are here to help you work with that as a tool. So these are some of the things we typically talk about when we're talking about the using our religious science principles and how to make our lives better, right? Choosing to embrace possibilities beyond our imagination, right? That's really a radical act, right? Some of us imagine that we have to kind of live with what we have, right? That's sort of the nature of life. It's not going to get any better. Or we rely on the idea of somebody else out there. Somebody else out there is going to fix this for us because we don't know how to move forward. But it is a radical act for ourselves to say, more is possible for me, and I am going to be part of that realization. So we can be experts in theory, but never experience the benefits unless we exercise choice. So the choice is, are we going to practice? And the choice is, what types of tools are we going to use? And who else am I going to rely on to support me in using those tools? You have a whole community here at Ohm to do that with. Right? Because it's always easier to do things with other people, or at least I find that to be so. All right, so I want to encourage you to think about that. So another kind of choice I want to talk with you briefly today has to do with how we act in the world, our choice of what we do, how we engage. So Centers for Spiritual Living has what we call a global vision, and this is one of the tenets of the global vision. We see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. So this week has been a difficult one for me and a lot of people I know. Since the inauguration of the president on Monday, and the daily onslaught of decisions he has been making. Multiple family members and people I love, people who identify as queer, people who identify as Latino, or immigrants from other countries have spoken with me to express their fear and their dismay. And like them, I've wondered how to make sense of what is happening and how to respond to it. I have found my heart uplifted by leadership expressed by people like the spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living, Reverend Soni Cantrell, who issued a statement this week in love and support of transgender members of our community and of our nation. And I've also been inspired by the story and writing of someone who some of you may have heard about this week. This is Reverend Marianne Buddy. She is the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, D.C. And some of you may have heard of her this past week because on Tuesday at the National Prayer Service following President Trump's inauguration on Monday, Reverend Buddy spoke directly to the president and said the following, and I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really important to hear kind of this thing that she said to him. He was sitting right in front of her at the National Cathedral. In the name of God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families. Some who fear for their lives. The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shift in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, gurdwaras, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away. And that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. These are very, very powerful words, and I encourage you to look them up and take them in again, because I don't think one single reading is enough to really take them in. But I wanted to share those with you because they really deeply touched me. And I learned some other things about Reverend Buddy that also touched me. So she came to these words following a previous experience with the actions of our president during his first term. This was something I learned this week. And this occurred over the protests after the murder of George Floyd. And some of you may remember that there was a period of protest that was taking place, and one such protest was in front of the White House. And President Trump demanded that those protesters be cleared from this little plaza that's in front of the White House, and he walked across the plaza and stood in front of St. John's Church, which is an Episcopal church that is part of the churches that Reverend Buddy oversees. And he stood in front of that church and held a Bible, which was actually upside down. Some of you may remember that image. And she was horrified that he chose to do this, because to her, right, this was not in any alignment with the Christian faith that she professed. And so she felt called upon in that moment to speak out publicly about that. And she called that a decisive moment for her, right? She didn't know what was going to happen, and she was a little scared about doing it, but she did it because it shocked her conscience, and she felt that as a person of faith, she had to speak from that place of conscience. Following that experience, she eventually came to write a book where she reflected on this idea of decisive moments. and the book is called How We Learn to Be Brave, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. And I heard about this book earlier in the week. When I went to look for it, it was sold out everywhere. But I was able to get it on Kindle. And so I want to share something that she wrote in this. The courage to be brave when it matters most requires a lifetime of small decisions that sets us on a path of self-awareness, attentiveness, and willingness to risk failure for what we believe is right. It is also a profoundly spiritual experience, one in which we feel a part of something larger than ourselves and guided somehow by a larger spirit at work in the world and in us. Decisive moments make believers out of everyone, for no matter what name we give to it, the inexplicable, unmerited experience of a power greater than our own working through us is real. The audacious truth is that we matter in the realization of all that is good and noble and true. We matter. What each and every one of us does matters. This doesn't mean that you have to stand up in a national venue like the National Cathedral and speak power directly to the president, though I encourage you to do so if you feel so called. It can be you smile at someone every day. It can be you affirm someone's humanity every day, right? There are any myriad of actions, of choices to act we can take. That can mean that in a social situation where someone says something negative about whoever, right? You can say, wow, I'm really sad to hear you say that. I believe that, right? Blank, right? That all human beings are equally worthy. I believe in the good. I believe we should all support each other. Whatever it is you feel called upon to say. The point is that we all can choose to act. Just the same way we can choose to practice our principles to help our lives be something greater, more profoundly good expressions of the divine, so do we have that power to choose to act in the world, to realize that idea of the world that works for everyone. Because ultimately, it all comes back to us. So I just want to invite you this week to take an action to engage with principle and to take an action to engage with the world. One action that you might take to engage with principle is to express an affirmation every day. One affirmation about a way that you would like to see the good in your life grow, right? And to think of one action that you might take that makes your world, that contributes to your world being a little bit better, right? To reflect on what's happening and what might be yours to do to contribute to that world. Reverend William Barber, who is a minister and activist, one of the co-founders of the Poor People's Campaign, said this: "It has always been a coalition of the faithful that has brought about change in this country. Black, white, and brown, rich and poor, young and old, everyone is needed. Everyone has a part to play and an offering to make." We'll get to that in a sec. I just want to conclude today. I know I've read a lot today, so I apologize for that, but there's so much great stuff there to share with you. So Ernest Holmes concludes The Science of Mind with this statement, and I think it's really important to keep in mind. He said, I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than to practice it, but the practice of truth is personal to each. And in the long run, no one can live our life for us, right? To each is given what he needs, and the gifts of heaven come alike to all. How shall we use these gifts is all that matters. To hold one's thoughts steadfastly to the constructive, to that which endures, to the truth, may not be easy in a rapidly changing world. And imagine, he wrote Rapidly Changing World in 1926. But hey, rapidly changing world. But to the one who makes the attempt, much is guaranteed. Okay. So I want to invite you to stand and join me in this affirmation today. All right, and we'll do it the way that we like to do it here. We'll whisper it, we'll speak it, and then we will affirm it. So, I choose today to experience greater good in my life and to do my part to create a world that works for everyone. I choose today to experience greater good in my life and to do my part to create a world that works for everyone. I choose today to experience greater good in my life and do my part that creates a world that works for everyone. Yay. Namaste. So it is. Thank you.